Hey, I'm your host, TheDoctorDanko, come on in. You've been missing out, so let's begin. Pumpkin_crumb is your host here too. When you hear the beat, you know what to do. Why didn't you warn me? Why didn't you warn me now? Why didn't you warn me? Why didn't you warn me? Hey. Good evening and welcome to Why Did Not You Warn Me?
Do you know who voices Siri on Twitter? Nope.
You done fucked up, Aaron. So, first off, I'm your host, Matthew the Dr. Danko, and this is my lovely co-host,
Hillary Crow.
Yeah, that's where you come in. For your name.
It's been a while.
It's been a while.
Sorry, I don't know how to do this anymore.
It's fine.
What are you doing?
You're a little loud. According to our levels, and I'm also loud.
You're a sound guy, so...
It's just gonna blast out our listeners.
They have volume controls.
Anyways, so what that was about... We were just having a conversation since Hillary's phone has recently updated itself.
Without my consent or knowledge.
I'm sure that's not true. Knowledge, yes. Wow.
Consent is just a buzzword, right?
It is.
So anyway, my phone updated, and now it's mansplaining all of the features to me as though
Right.
I have not had this phone for over a year now.
Yes, and I think it's just like the tips
You're
thing
gonna keep creaking that chair around?
Yes.
'Cause our viewers are gonna get blasted out.
Our viewers are our listeners. Anyway, so she was like, my phone is mansplaining to me, and I was like, first off, your phone's a woman because of Siri. And then I just said, and Siri is a woman who follows me on podcasts on Twitter.
You fucked up too.
Yeah, well, this show is called Why Did Not
Great.
You Warn
Welcome
Me?
to the train wreck.
What
did we decide we were going to talk about?
We were going to do...
It's been 12,000 years since we've done this. We've consumed a lot of content.
We have, and so... Not to sound overwhelming, we're going to split it up into two podcasts.
Should I give, like, the laundry list of things we need to talk about?
Sure.
Okay. So, we finished Buffy, so we have to talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
We finished the show Making It, so we have to talk about that. We finished the Golden Compass book and watched the movie, which I think is what we're going to talk about in this one.
Correct.
We saw Hank and John Green at an event, which was exciting, that we're going to talk about.
It's dope.
What else? And we started watching The Flash again, but I don't know if we're at the point.
Yeah,
where
we're
we need
not
to
at the
talk about
point,
it yet.
I think, where we need to talk about it.
I read my best friend Devin's book finally, so I have to talk about that.
Yeah, there have been things that I have consumed within the time period too, but I don't really know if it's super interesting. I could give like 5-minute synopses on the things that I've done and read and listened to.
Right.
Watched.
Right. And I mean, there are feminist issues
And I actually
that
did
could
read
go
something, but yeah.
on and on and on about forever. But
Right.
I don't think we want to bring politics into this.
Not
just
not
scream and
unless
cry.
we're dedicating an episode to it.
Right.
Because I mean, it wasn't dedicated to politics, but we did do that for Black Panther.
We did. And we will have to do it again for The Hate You Give, which is being made into a movie, which is exciting because the trailer looks amazing, and I almost cried. Mm-hmm. But anyway.
All right. So we'll start off with, let's just do the Hank Green and John Green event.
So I have followed John and Hank Green for many, many years. John Green wrote a bunch of books, most famously The Fault in Our Stars. But John and Hank also have a YouTube channel called Vlogbrothers. Mm-hmm. And they have like a shit ton of other online content, including a podcast called Dear Hank and John. I started off reading John's books, and then I found Vlogbrothers, and it's just such a like nice, wonderful community, nerdfighteria, that's sprung up around these two and their content. And John usually is the one writing books, but this time Hank has written a book, a young adult novel, which again is John's thing, but whatever.
Yeah.
And so he was doing a book tour, and for a couple of the stops, including the one in North Canton, Ohio, which is where we went, John was going to be joining him. So Matt got me tickets to the show for my birthday, and it was super, super fun. And I say show and not just book reading, because
Yeah, it was a show.
Book readings, there's a fairly specific formula where the author shows up and reads part of their book and takes questions and then talks about the book, and that's it.
Yeah, I really didn't know what to expect.
I've been to a couple of book readings, but you haven't.
No,
It's not
never.
anything.
And so the way the venue was like described to me, it did seem a little more than just a book reading.
Right.
But it did open with a book reading.
Yeah.
And then it got into, well, the show aspect of it, I guess.
Right. Yeah, so Hank also plays music. So there was the book reading part of it, which is pretty quick. And then we got the lecture on robots from,
like the evolution of robots from the 1920s and 30s till
until the Transformer movies, honestly.
basically, yeah.
And the instructor who gave
The professor,
the
Albert
professor.
Bumblebee.
Right. And the minute he started talking, I was like, that is John Green in a full body adult bee costume.
Yeah.
This man has won many awards for his written works. He's a very smart guy, and he's
on stage in a bee costume.
you can't see his face.
No.
Like
And he's giving a lecture on the evolution of robots and how the Transformers franchise has misrepresented him
as a robot.
As a robot.
And a transformer, because he can turn into a Kia Sorento.
Yes.
And like, so I'm watching this, having this, backlog of experience with John and Hank Green and the way they create content. And I'm looking at Matt and I'm just cracking up, because this is an event that I have dragged him to that he knows nothing about. And now an adult man dressed in a bumblebee costume is lecturing him about robots.
It wasn't like, all right, like that off the bat just sounds weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it wasn't so much that there was that happening, because I was like on board with it. I just didn't know where it was going.
And I didn't either. Like, I knew there was probably going to be music. I figured they were going to do a Question Tuesday. And
Yeah. But the way they tied everything together, or Hank did rather, made sense. So if you want to...
Yeah, so he said that what he had tried to create with the show was basically a microcosm of the internet. So it opened with him talking about something that he created to people who were listening, and then there was a random educational video, and then, like, interspersed were viral videos, and then a guy came out and sang nerd music, and then there was an advice podcast, and there were people answering trivia questions and hitting each other while blindfolded.
Yeah.
Like,
all these weird aspects that we see on a pretty regular basis.
yeah, that sort of span most of what's on the internet. And there was also, the important part was that there was active participation from the audience, which is a vital feature of what makes the internet the internet.
Yeah.
And what I have always loved about John and Hank, and what brings me back to them over and over and over again, even as I age out of the typical age range of their audience, is that, like, they're so smart, and they're sincere, and they're thoughtful, and they're kind, but they're so funny. But, like, they've built this image of themselves, this persona they've created, as being so pro-internet. And one of the things that Hank talked about was how he has been struggling with that in recent years. How, you see people who became internet famous, who wielded the power that they had in bad ways.
Yeah.
Some of that involving sexual scandals. And, like, a lot of it just resulting in unkindness and people not treating each other the way that they should be treated, because we don't have the rules yet to govern the internet, because we don't know what it is, so we don't know how to handle it.
And it's sort of this, it's not a tangible thing. I know that he was referring to it as like a room. Like every website is sort of its own room, and there will never be the same amount or the same grouping of people in the same room throughout.
Yeah.
By like on a second by second basis, pretty much, because so many people have access to the internet, and it's just like the wild, wild west of everything.
Social
basically.
interaction.
It's even hard to somewhat like
it's hard to talk
explain
about
the concept of the internet
because it's
like we just
amorphous
accept it
and,
as is.
Yeah, so Matt and I had like a really intense conversation about that on the car ride home, covering everything from what we just talked about, like through the repeal of net neutrality, even though we weren't going to bring politics into this.
No,
but yeah, I mean, so there was the angle of it that was so funny and so weird, but there was also this just deeply thoughtful and introspective part of it, which like John and Hank Green, like I am a different person because of my interaction with their content, whether they're videos and John's books and everything, because I mean, like John Green's whole thing is that nerds are allowed to be unironically enthusiastic about stuff, and he sort of defined the word introvert for me and helped me realize that because I was that way, I was just something different than other people. It wasn't better, it wasn't worse, and I grew up in a family of extroverts, thinking that I was a little weird for being quiet and not wanting to hang out with people. Or
just shy.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I was labeled as a kid, and I mean, part of it is being shy because you're a kid in like an adult situation, like they're at a family dinner or whatever. You're just
you're not talking
quiet
and you
want
to leave.
But you don't have the word to think, oh, I'm an introvert because I don't really like being around other people as much.
And the other part of it is that it's not just not liking it, but it's more than that. It's being drained by it.
Yeah, that
how
it
you
physically
need that
exhausts
time
you.
by yourself.
Yeah.
Because you get exhausted by all the human contact. And yeah, if you don't have that word introvert, then you aren't really able to explain it to anyone. So you just think that you're weird and a loner and everyone thinks you're sad. That's not it.
Not
I
the
just
case.
want to hang out and watch, I want to binge watch something for a while with no one else except Matt.
Sam.
Yeah,
I just want to binge watch stuff by myself.
I get that.
No, it is, yeah.
Yeah, so if you haven't checked out Vlogbrothers, you probably should. Like, the old stuff is great. I can't speak to the new stuff because I stopped watching the videos religiously.
Yeah.
I've always been more of a fan of John than of Hank. Not even just because of the books, but just because John talks more about, like, literary stuff, social stuff, and Hank talks more about science, which has never really been my thing.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, they're both very smart, very interesting, and super funny. I've heard really good things about the podcast, too, although I haven't listened to it, so.
Yeah.
And read John's books. Like, holy fuck, read John Green books. And I'm, like, a quarter of the way into Hank's book, and so far it's really good, although more, like, coldly scientific than John's books, which makes sense. Yeah, I'll let you know how I feel about it when I'm finished.
Yeah, because I do think I'd find it interesting.
I think you should read the book. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, so that was a cool thing. It was a good birthday gift.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good birthday gift. No,
yeah, it was.
It was a fun time, and those live events. I mean, it was similar to a Kevin Smith type show where it's like, I mean, especially if it's like Kevin Smith and Jason Mewes, because they do like they're recording the podcast the whole time throughout the entire show.
Okay.
But they do the Q&A part, and then they do like Let Us Act or Let Us Fuck are their games that they play where it's like...
And then they just fuck each other on stage?
No, they have people in the audience come up. And they act out like...
What?
I knew you were going to do that. So they don't actually have sex. It's air sex, as it is.
What?
So they come up with a name like the Ewok Cock Block, and then
you have to
Jason
do it?
Mewes and whoever the volunteer is go backstage and figure out what that's going to look like, and then they get up on stage and have the fun of creating it and doing
cock
it.
blocking?
Yeah.
Wow.
Or like the Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back.
All right, so John and Hank are like the PG version of that.
Yes, what I meant there is
Ewok
the
cock-blocking.
thoughtful element of the show, where it's like, this is an author that I really like, or an artist, or whoever.
Right, let's talk
the creative
about art
part,
or the internet. Or...
Yeah, and then there's the performance aspect of it.
Okay.
Because the Let Us Act is where they take a script, and they have Jason Mewes act out one part, and the volunteer act out the other, and Kevin Smith is directing them.
And he just sits there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he stops them if they're doing something weird. He mostly stops Jason Mewes from overacting, which...
Great.
Yeah.
Just, like, pull it back.
Right, exactly. But that's what I meant. There's like the creative aspect and then the performance aspect, and it's still all one very
And like
cool
the stuff
show.
that the fans expect without it being formulaic. It's like,
yeah,
like
I mean,
the fans know it's coming. It's not alienating for people who aren't
right
part of
in
it.
the beginning, because like the Jay and Silent Bob Get Old podcast, people that were coming to the events just thought it was them doing their Jay and Silent Bob shtick. And Kevin's like, that wouldn't really work since I don't talk. Like,
right.
No, this is a
Not
little
good for a
different. It's like a
podcast.
brand sort of thing because they are in Jay and Silent Bob personas and they're getting older and things like that. So they've made it a more interactive show, and same with Edumacation now that they're doing their pub quizzes. But
all right, so back to what we were
Yeah.
actually talking about.
Sorry.
You went on your I love Kevin Smith rant.
And what's
This
wrong
is
with that?
about
It's
my
my
love
birthday.
of John Green. It's not.
I know. We're recording this on September 29th.
Which is not your
No,
birthday.
but tomorrow on that podcast, since we're
It
splitting
will be
this
your
up,
birthday,
it'll be my
and then I'll
birthday.
just fuck off, and you can talk about
No.
how much you want to have sex with Kevin Smith.
It's not it. It's not sexual.
Okay, honey, we're not doing this right now.
You brought it up.
So we went to a Hank Green show, and it was great, and Matt didn't feel too weird, even though he didn't know what was going on.
Yes.
We got to hear John Green say he hates Batman, which was very validating for me.
For you, yes.
Oh, we also have to talk about our intense discussion about the DC cinematic
We'll
universe.
save that for tomorrow. Since
Well, yeah,
it's
I
my
was just
birthday.
adding that to the
Okay,
list.
yeah.
Okay, so you want to move on?
Yeah, I think that was a good...
Okay. So, The Golden Compass.
Yeah.
I think first we should talk about what you thought about the book, and then we'll spend 30 seconds on that shitstorm of a movie.
Okay, so we also should say what the book is.
Well, yeah, I was
Yeah,
gonna
yeah.
just
Okay, just...
frame this.
Okay, I'm
Alright,
sorry.
Go ahead.
No, it's
Your
so...
birthday.
It's not my birthday. So, The Golden Compass, which I think a lot of people would know just because of the movie existing.
Yeah, a lot of people know that it exists. I don't know if the movie made people read the book.
No. I didn't know
would
it was a
venture
book.
to say no. Okay.
And there was no evidence to that fact
It
when the movie
did not
came out.
feel like a book movie.
It felt...
Okay, well, we're not doing the
All
movie
right.
yet.
No,
So, The Golden
I know.
Compass is part of the trilogy called His Dark Materials by Philip Pullman.
Yeah. No, you describe the book.
I
Cause
just feel like I've done a lot of talking on this one.
You just give the basis of the book,
Okay.
and then I'll jump into the...
Okay, so 3 parts: Golden Compass, The Subtle Knife, and The Amber Spyglass. I've read the books before. I listened to the audiobooks when I was in middle school, I think, and I remember thinking at the time, like, there's more going on here than my 12-year-old brain is able to comprehend.
Yeah.
The audiobooks are particularly worth mentioning because it's read by a full British cast,
Yeah.
and Philip Pullman himself is the narrator.
Which, like, unless you're Jim Dale, you should always have multiple people read parts for your book.
We learned that from Good Omens.
That's
like,
exactly
the guy
the
reading
point.
the kids sounded like a grizzled old man.
Yeah.
Whereas Lyra Belacqua sounds like a 10-year-old little girl.
Yes.
Lyra Silvertongue. Sweet mascot.
Silvertongue, yes.
So, what's the premise? Like, there's a lot going on
So-
immediately.
Yeah, that's honestly why I was going to have you do it, because I don't know how to describe
so
it
it's a children's story. I think it's
on the surface.
on the surface. I think it's like right on the border of independent reader and young adult because of the content. Like, the protagonist is 10 or 11, like just prepubescent, which
Yeah.
becomes important. So Lyra Belacqua is a little girl who grew up living basically as an orphan, but an orphan of noble birth at
Right.
Jordan College, which is part of Oxford. I keep meaning to look up if Jordan College is real.
Yeah.
And that's probably a really stupid thing to say. But
Well, no, I mean, you, in the context of the book, you just sort of accept it as a thing.
Right.
So, like, yeah, of course there's a Jordan College.
right, like we know Oxford is real, but I
Right.
don't know if Jordan is actually a part of it. Jordan's whole thing is they have like this expertise in experimental theology. The very notable thing about these books is that they get banned constantly because the church is the villain.
Yep.
It's not subtle. It gets less subtle as we go on.
Yeah.
I read a Tumblr post that I couldn't reblog because it would have spoiled a lot of things for you, but it gets much, much less subtle as we go on.
Good.
So yeah, one of the other notable things about this world is that every human is accompanied by their demon, and that's spelled Daemon, which isn't super important, but it's interesting.
Yeah.
And their demon takes the form of an animal. When you are prepubescent, your demon changes shapes pretty constantly, and then eventually, for some unknown reason, it settles into one form. I say unknown, but I know you do.
Don't. I can see it on your face.
And don't ask anything, because if you guess right, I'll tell you, because I'm bad at this.
Yes.
So your demon is basically an external representation of your soul.
Yeah. And they're connected, so like, more or less, if something happens to you, your demon feels it, and vice versa.
Right, and there's a great taboo in this society against putting your hands on someone else's demon.
Yeah.
Demons can touch each other, and humans can touch each other, but you cannot touch someone else's demon.
Yeah, that's like their essence almost.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like, I don't know, I don't want to say the word rape, but it feels really bad and dirty when someone touches your demon.
Yeah.
So we, lights up on Lyra, and she is like hiding in the retiring room of Jordan College, which is a room where girls are not allowed to be women at all, but especially, 11-year-olds who have no business being where the scholars hang out. And her uncle Azriel shows up, and the master of Jordan tries to poison him. And Lyra stops this from happening, and we learn about the existence of this thing called dust, which is dust with a capital D, and we find out at the end of the book that it's like...
It's like an elemental particle.
Right. It's
like,
part of the...
Like neutrons
an
and
elementary
electrons.
particle.
An elementary particle.
Which means that it can't be, like, divided
down. And it's like... It's almost like the particle between particles.
Yeah.
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 Something like that.
Like, it's connected to humans and their demons, and also...
And the universe.
Yeah, and the aurora borealis, the northern lights. Like,
yeah.
Yeah, and, like... It's all very complicated. What's very cool about the book is that we have this little girl who's living her little girl life. And, because it's a fantasy novel, she goes off on this grand adventure that she doesn't really understand she's having. And moving around her, metaphorically, symbolically, are these just, like, giant thematic ideas of, like, the shifting of understanding of the world. And it's very difficult to summarize.
Yeah, it's a deep book that you wouldn't expect from a children's book, and like at face value, it is an adventure, this little kid going on a journey, but it's not even about the journey, like the getting from point A to point B, because there really is none of that. Like,
yeah, we were trying to figure out like what her motivation is.
Yeah.
Like, so the Golden Compass. The Master of Jordan gives Lyra this alethiometer, which is a truth reader, but it looks like a golden compass, which is whatever. So Lyra thinks that her goal is to bring this alethiometer to her uncle Azriel, who has been imprisoned by armored bears. It sounds so ridiculous. Also, this book is like, I think it's less than 300 pages long.
Yeah.
And it is insane, the amount of shit that happens fully. And like none of it feels like you skimmed over it.
Way more happens in this book than I would say the first Harry Potter book.
Yeah, because Harry Potter had like one point A to point B.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And Lyra doesn't really have that.
No, so
like,
she wants
in her head, she thinks, this is what I'm doing to get this golden compass to my father.
Yeah, spoilers. Uncle Azriel is her father.
Uncle Azriel, yes.
There's also the whole thing with the gobblers taking her friend Roger. And she wants to get Roger from the gobblers.
Because they take kids. That's basically it.
Yeah, they take them to Bolvangar.
Yeah.
Which is...
But, like, on... I thought Lyra and the other kids' understanding of it was that they just snatch children.
They take kids and they don't know where they go.
Yeah. They disappear.
But Lyra is a plucky little girl. And
she finds out.
She's so cool. Like, one of the best things about the series is that Lyra is just such a strong and immediately lovable character.
Yeah.
Like, she's such a little kid. She lies all the time just because she can, and it's fun. And like,
why not?
Like, embellishing lies, not like mean lies.
Yeah,
just like, I'm
or
so
to get
much
out of
cooler.
trouble, but just like, my father's a murderer, and
she's like, she had to run away from something, and she ended up like on the streets of London by herself, and some creepy guy tried to talk to her, and she's like, I'm just waiting for my father. He's a murderer.
He's coming back from murdering someone.
I have like clothes in my bag for him because he's always covered in blood when he comes back.
Right, and shit like that, and that's just like such a little kid thing to do.
It's so cool.
And then as the story progresses, she starts using it as like a survival tool. So it's not just about like conversational lying. It's like useful.
It's getting something.
It's manipulating
a situation so that she can survive and get what she wants.
Yeah.
Which sounds cruel and skeezy, but she's still...
I mean, as a kid,
it works.
Yeah.
She's such a lovable character. And
I don't even know... Sorry, you can say what you need to say.
It's enhanced by whoever's reading it.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I don't know if we're going to do this book justice, because
I know,
I'm sitting here thinking about what we're saying, and it's not... We
haven't even, like, scratched the surface.
There is so much intertwined within this book, and it's... I don't...
Like, the themes are so deep, because the criticism of the church as an institution, it's not... They don't fuck around.
No, they don't.
They go really hard with the church is trying to control people, and they want to eliminate original sin by cutting away children's demons, which... it's so nuts.
Yeah.
The lengths that the church is willing to go to, quote, protect people.
Right.
But protect basically is just a euphemism for control.
Yeah, because, like, they have their agenda.
And they don't really care who they hurt in the process.
That's why the whole gobbler thing more
the
or less
gobblers
exists.
were the church.
Yeah.
Like, it was... an obscure offshoot. It's the General Oblation Board.
God.
Right, run by, spoilers, Lyra's mother.
Yeah.
Mrs. Coulter, who's a bitch.
Yeah,
and
she
her
is a
goddamn golden monkey demon.
Yeah.
It's awful, and I hate him.
But there is there's a childlike element to the book. I mean, because you're seeing it through Lyra's eyes, and she's figuring everything out as we're figuring it out. But, yeah, the book has just some... crazy heavy themes to it.
It is,
yeah, I wouldn't have picked up if I had read it as a kid. I wouldn't have understood. And
I remember because a friend of our family, he suggested the audiobooks to me because his kids had loved them. This is Pete. And I remember, I deeply wanted to impress Pete. So I wanted to get more out of this book. I was like, I really liked the story. And I loved, the experience of having it read to me. That was great. But, I reread it. The last time we were at Busch Gardens was when I reread the series fully. Because that was why I ordered the three-book set.
Okay.
And there's, it's so insane how short these books are because so much happens. And they're intricate while at the same time not, because it's sort of like Lyra's story. The whole thing about Lyra as a character that we get from the Master of Jordan at the beginning is that she has a key role to play, but she cannot know that she's doing it.
Yeah.
And that it plays because she doesn't know the big wheels that are turning around her.
No.
She's a little girl.
And she's venturing off into all these different places, pretending to be, this, blending into the school or whatever. The institution.
Bolvanger.
Yeah. as one of the kids that have been kidnapped and like operating within their walls and
And,
taking them down from the inside.
Yeah, engineering this escape plan.
Yeah.
And it's
Michael
so good.
Scofield level shit.
Right, and
in a
she's
sense.
10 or 11. I don't remember.
And then recruiting an
Armored bear.
armored bear
Yeah.
to find kids and defend. I don't know. It's
There's
just
so much.
it's a crazy book that I don't know how it was received when it was released.
Right, and
or
I
what
think
the intended audience was.
I think, and I've thought about, and I don't know if I know we've talked about it in real life. I don't know if we've talked about it on the podcast, but my theory that in order for a series to gain traction, there have to be at least 4 books. Because that's what it takes for people to start noticing.
Yeah.
And the Golden Compass, there are only 3. The other problem, I would imagine, is the subject matter. So it's not as universal as Harry Potter. Even though people thought that Harry Potter was all ooh, witchcraft, anti-Christian. You don't have to think about if the Golden Compass is anti-Christian.
Yeah.
It is.
It straight up is.
Yeah.
Chuck Norris said so.
And if Chuck Norris said so, you wanna get into the movie? I don't know if we're gonna do much better with the book. The book is really good. It's an adventure. It's a kid's adventure, but it goes into some crazy adult places, and it's interesting. It did take me a little while to get hooked in, but that is more to do with just my brain and audiobooks. Right. You relax.
Yeah, but once I can stop thinking and I know a few of the pieces and the characters we're dealing with, the story just keeps you going. And you do want more by the end of the book.
Which is good, because there's 2 more books.
I know. So, we watched the movie yesterday.
The movie is famously bad.
It's on Netflix.
So make your own judgments.
So
but we're going to
feel free to
ruin a
watch
whole bunch for you.
It stars because
what the fuck? It stars Daniel Craig as Lord Asriel,
Nicole Kidman
as Mrs. Coulter,
Sir Ian McKellen
as the Armored Bear,
and then
Freddie Highmore voices Lyra's demon
as the demon Pan, and then Dakota Fleming, I want to say her name is. She has 3 names, but the little actress that plays...
The little actress
who is presumably grown up since then.
She was
pretty old grown up in that movie.
Which is one of our main hang-ups, was that the strength of the book is that you can one of the strengths of the book is that you can latch on to Lyra, and you cannot latch on to this girl in the movie. There's nothing there. Also, she's almost as tall as Daniel Craig. Which, granted, he's a short guy, but she's supposed to be 10 or 11.
Right. And so the thing about book adaptations into movies that we have talked about before.
At length, because I will never be able to objectively do it.
Right. And I like to think that I am able to do that.
Right.
Especially, I like to look at it objectively, even though my background is in film. But separating the idea that, this is a movie that's based on a book. As a movie, it is just not good. It doesn't really have
there's not a through line.
There's not a through line, so we don't really know what anyone's motivations are. It jumps around so much. It skips a lot of plot points within the book while trying to achieve the same results that the book had.
Except it cut short of where the end of the book stuck, because they reordered some things.
Right. So basically, the movie becomes about Lyra finding Roger, who's the boy that's taken in the beginning. Right. And along the way, she meets the cast of characters that we've met in the book.
Some of them. Well, no, I guess she does meet all of the important ones.
Yeah.
Which is even more astonishing, because none of them do anything. She meets all of them, but...
Yeah. So, it really is a point A to point B in the movie. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't make sense at all.
It doesn't make sense why she's trying to get to point B.
Right.
There's no drive.
And also, it's completely different from the book in terms of the order of the way things happen. And then, yes, like you said, how it ends, which
The ending of the book is so damn good.
Yeah, the ending of the book
can't beat
makes you want more.
Right.
And we're watching the movie last night, and we're like...
I was like, wouldn't it be funny if it just ended,
right?
right?
And it's like, yeah, they're playing the dramatic music. They're, like, sitting in this balloon basket,
and
like, going off into the sunset. And it just ends.
Like, cut to credits.
And there's still, like, a whole scene.
Like, the biggest, most important thing that happened
what is
in the book.
Actual
right, what have we
purpose?
actually been doing this whole time?
Yeah.
And they just cut it.
Because in the book, spoilers, but, like, Lord Asriel has found a way to cross into another world, which we didn't talk about the other world things.
But through the Aurora.
Through the Aurora, using
energy,
dust? Or using
the energy that emanates from the process of cutting a child from their demon.
Right.
Yeah.
So, like, Lord Asriel
Dust is involved,
and Coulter? Mrs. Coulter.
Mrs.
What's
Coulter.
her first name?
Marissa.
I keep wanting to call her Anne.
No,
yeah,
it's not Anne Coulter.
I know, that's the problem.
that
so
bitch Anne Coulter.
I mean, but real though.
Anyway, not the point.
So, like, they both have this idea of cutting away demons to I don't know what things. To do different things.
The Oblation Board, the Gobblers, thinks that they are basically saving children from the taint of original sin.
Okay, and that's like the church aspect of it.
Yeah.
Whereas Lord Asriel is like,
he just wants
you
to use
can
it.
harness that energy and put it towards this really cool thing, which is going into another world for whatever reason.
Right.
I don't really know why. And
okay, so do you want me to tell you? Because it's in the first book.
Okay, yeah.
He wants to go into another world because whenever he looks at these photograms of the Aurora, you see the dust falling from above. From the Aurora where you can see the city.
Yeah.
So he thinks that if he can create a bridge, I'm talking with my hands a lot, if he can create a bridge to the other world where the dust is coming from, that he can find the source of dust and destroy it.
I see. So yeah, he wants to go to the source. She just wants to
get it out of human lives.
All right, fine.
Right, so we go through the book. The other really cool thing, sorry to derail you, is that there's not... Like, I say the church is the bad guy, but, like, within the story, there's Mrs. Coulter and Lord Asriel, and you sort of think that Mrs. Coulter represents the bad guys and Lord Asriel represents the good, but then you get to Lord Asriel, and he's like, no, I'm just trying to do what she's doing, just like harder. Like, like so way more... nobody is good.
Yeah.
And that, it just gets so much more convoluted.
Yeah. So yeah, there's nobody good, like, on either side. The only one we're supposed to be rooting for is Lyra and I guess her band of merry misfits. More or less.
Who are sort of scattered throughout the knowable universe.
But in the movie, it ends right before all that interesting shit happens with Lord Asriel, where we see him build the bridge. He cuts the demon away from Roger.
Which kills him.
Which murders him.
Yeah, like, he murders a child.
And... yeah, then he goes off and fucks off into the new...
Yeah, he runs off across the bridge into the other world, trying to take Mrs. Coulter with him. She's having none of it. So the ending of the book is Lyra and Pan, her demon, walk across the bridge into the new world.
And they, like, look back at
all the, like, darkness and terror that they left behind them, and uncertainty lies ahead. And,
right.
Like, what an I'm getting chills. Like, what an amazing way to end a book.
Ending. And then in the movie, Roger's alive. They're just, like I said, they're hanging out in a balloon basket. I don't know where they are exactly.
It's relevant, but
and they just end the movie there, like, we're gonna go off and find the next adventure, but there's been no build up to what that should be.
Right.
And
so we're not, like, the cool thing at the end of a book is you have specific questions that you need answered.
Right.
We did not. We're just like, what?
Way open-ended.
Right.
With no build-up to what even...
Yeah, and, like, so the Golden Compass, you'd think theoretically if they're making the one, they have vague plans of making all three, but...
Ideally, you want to keep your franchise going and make more money.
Yeah, but the thing that I felt overwhelmingly about the movie was that it was not made by someone who loved the book, because or
read the book,
right.
Or knew the book was
Somebody
a book.
Like, read a Wikipedia summary.
Yeah.
But, like, a lot of the stuff that, I mean, it's like Harry Potter. The details that got mentioned casually end up being super important down the line. But the benefit that the Golden Compass had that Harry Potter didn't is that all 3 books were already out. Like, so you could have just read them, and they're not terribly long. Like, even The Amber Spyglass is the longest, and it is maybe the size of Prisoner of Azkaban.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would not have been hard to do your homework.
It was a rough movie for a lot of reasons, and
it's wholly unsatisfying.
Part of it, is that Lyra's not,
like, in addition to being physically not what we were looking for, she was a very lackluster actor.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully she's gotten better since then, or found passion in another field.
Found work. Like.
I haven't looked at her IMDb page.
You want to be like, well, she's a child, but like, listen.
Yeah,
so was Emma Watson, Rupert Grint, and Daniel.
I was thinking that during the movie, like, I could use the argument, well, she's just a kid and she doesn't really know, like, comparing her acting to an actor like Sir Ian McKellen or somebody like that.
Right, it's gonna come off rough.
It's rough, but there have been many successful movies with many successful child actors in them.
Like the kid who played Billy Costa was more engaging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's
hard,
but the movie,
not worth
it could have really been called anything.
Yeah, and you said that it felt like a Chronicles of Narnia knockoff. Which it really
which is weird because it's like a professional film from a professional company with professional actors.
Which is also hilarious because Narnia is so Christian.
Yeah, but it really felt like...
The other thing was that they did not ever refer to the church specifically. The magisterium.
Yeah, they never said the church. There were
was no imagery,
crosses or anything. The closest they got was some of the garb that these gentlemen were wearing.
Like, it looked very like Orthodox, churchy.
Looked like that guy looks like a priest, but he has weird symbols and stuff, so he's not.
Right.
And
it's very interesting.
It's funny.
The other thing to mention, I know we have to wind this up soon, there is going to be a BBC remake of The Golden Compass. This time it is going to be a series.
Yeah.
And all I know about casting is that Lee Scoresby, the Texan aeronaut, will be played by Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Yeah,
which is delightful.
Which will be really cool because, I mean, the actor that played him in the movie was cool.
Great.
He fit the role, but anything Lin does, it's going to be entertaining
wonderful
to watch.
Exactly. And I love that it's going to be a series. I love that the BBC is doing it.
Yeah, it was funny. I was reading the trivia page for this movie, and one of the trivia facts is that George R.R. Martin... this movie is the reason George R.R. Martin wanted the Game of Thrones to be a television series and not into a movie series because this movie was awful.
It was famously so bad, which is such a shame because the books are so good. Yeah, basic. Yeah, so we have lots more to talk about, but we have plans, so...
I guess we could end it there. I mean, that's fine. I wasn't... Normally, I'm the one that's going overkill, and you're the one that's, like, reining me in, but,
we talked about a lot of shit that I was into this time.
Yeah, I know. That's fine.
Did you have more to say?
I mean, I was going to give a little bit of what I had read and watched and things, because I don't want to dedicate tomorrow's podcast for all of that.
I mean, can you do it in 5 minutes?
Yeah. No. So I watched Wet Hot American Summer, the 10-year reunion, which, for those who aren't familiar, Wet Hot American Summer was this film that has, like, basically any famous comedian actor that you know of, like Amy Poehler, Paul Rudd, and Ian Michael Black, and the guys that did that show.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
It's okay. Well, they're actors.
Fuck off.
And a bunch of other guys. But they made the movie, and it was, like, set in the 80s or whatever at like a summer camp, and then Netflix decided a few years ago to make Wet Hot American Summer First Day at Camp or Last Day at Camp or something like that. But the premise was it takes place like the second the movie ends, but it's 20 years after the movie's been made, so they don't acknowledge that anyone has aged 20 years. They just pretend that they're still in their like teenage or whatever roles. And then they did a similar thing where they did like a 10-year reunion where they're all like, in 10 years we're going to come back to this camp and just relive all these memories. And they say it in the movie. So then they made the 10-year reunion where it's clearly the 90s. Everyone is like changing their style of clothing. And there's a whole scene where this woman has a box of stuff she's giving to her ex-boyfriend, and she's like, here are your inline skates, and here's your Walkman, and here's these things that are clearly from the 90s. Like, that's a line of dialogue. But the funny thing about it is, like, the premise is they're just at camp and all these wacky things happen. But they're like, President Ronald Reagan is going to buy the camp so that he can destroy the camp with a nuclear weapon that's hidden beneath the camp. And there's this CIA mole that exists within the camp. One of the camp counselors was turned into a can of vegetables, and everyone's just on board with it. And like Chris Pine is in the movie too, and he like was this rock and roll artist that came back, but then was shot and killed in the Last Day of Camp Netflix series. So they explain why he's back for this one, as the CIA faked his death and turned him into this cyborg with all these computer parts. And it goes really off the rails, and
Sounds like it.
crazy, but they're 20-minute episodes, and I think there's only 8 or 9 episodes in the season, so it's really easy to binge. But it's just wacky humor, and it's very entertaining. And Paul Rudd is like the bad boy at camp that like
That's unbelievable.
says like eat my farts and shit like that. Like,
That's believable.
yeah. And
Rides
there's
that line.
like there's this one scene where this guy comes in on an ATV and is like doing donuts in the dirt, and everyone's like, and he has a helmet on, and he's like, oh, it's Andy doing donuts just like Andy's always doing. And we think it's Paul Rudd, but then it pans over and Paul Rudd's like leaning up against the car eating donuts 2 at a time. It's like, yeah, just like he'd always doing them donuts. Just weird shit like that. So that was really entertaining to watch. I would definitely suggest watching that. And then I've rewatched some things like the Stephen King movie that happened not too long ago, last fall, I think.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm sure there have been other things I've watched, but I finished a book finally, the Five Nights at Freddy's book.
Proud of you.
I'm pretty sure we had just started doing the podcast, and I was like, I started reading this book. I'll let you know how it goes.
I think
Well,
so.
I finished it on vacation like a week ago,
I'm proud of you.
and it was okay.
Right.
Like-
It's not going to make you a reader.
No, I do have the sequel that I started, and it's it's like the same shit.
I offered you a different book, and you're like, no.
Yeah, but like I have so many of my own books that you keep recommending books, and then I feel bad that I'm not reading your books. So like,
I read
know,
a lot, and I think
and you
of
know
you, and
books that I would like, and
I
you're
do.
never wrong
No.
in that instance of books that I like.
You said I'm never
No,
wrong, and you didn't
I
offer any
prefaced.
qualifications until afterwards.
Or what's the opposite of prefaced?
Post-fist.
Yeah, suffixed.
Suffixed.
I
don't
guess.
know.
I don't know. Maybe it should be.
The
a
point
thing.
is, I'm right all the time.
No, that's not the point. The point is, it was an okay book. The game is way more interesting, and supposedly what is the movie, like, because there's going to be a movie.
Of course there is.
The premise of that is going to be a lot better, and I even told you what I thought the movie should be, but I won't get into that right now because
we don't have time.
We don't have time, but that's a good place to stop, I think. That's really all of the stuff I've caught up individually.
Okay.
So
we got lots more to talk about, and
we'll do it tomorrow,
we'll catch you
and
tomorrow.
then I'll post these sometime this week.
Okay.
All right, so I've been your host, Matthew the Dr. Danko.
I'm still Hillary Crum.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Yes.
We don't do this often enough to know how to end it.
Technical sign off.
Once the show ends, please don't shed those tears. We'll come back again, so have no fear. Oh, we told you that it just might end up this way. What's the show called again? You cannot be saying, why didn't you warn me? Why didn't you warn me now? Why didn't you warn me? Why didn't you warn me? Why didn't you warn me? Why didn't you warn me now?